Good morning. This is Haley Solomon with the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Thank you for joining us this morning for our housing call. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our Executive Director, Samuel Gunter.
Thank you so much, Haley. Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to have you on the call this morning. It's hot. Stuff is growing. It's beautiful outside. Let's get going. I'm going to start off with some updates from the coalition. There's actually a lot happening and a lot to put on your calendars. So first I want to start off by saying May 3rd at 10 a.m. we are doing our 5th Learning Collaborative session. This is part of our Housing Barriers for Justice-Involved Populations and Individuals at Risk of Overdose. This session is going to feature colleagues working within managed care who are working to support some of the most vulnerable folks in our state. Topics are going to cover transition to community living initiative, reentry supports, and services for those exiting institutions and other issues related to those seeking housing and behavioral health support. So that's, again, May 3rd at 10 a.m. And it's also my birthday, so if you want to, get me a present, that would be awesome. Our final Learning Collaborative session from that series is going to be May 17th, which is going to be a wrap-up of kind of connecting all the dots, giving it some big picture context, and talking about any next steps. So put those on your calendar, May 3rd and May 17th, for our final Learning Collaboratives. We also have our Bringing It Home conference, June 4th and 5th. Registration is live, and the agenda is now available, so you can see that on our website. Really excited about our keynote speaker, Marisol, from the Housing Narrative Lab. But you can look at the agenda there. Again, this is in person in Raleigh, June 4th and 5th. We are also having, as a reminder to put on your calendars, our fall conference, which is September 5th and 6th. It is earlier than it usually is. We usually have this in October, so I want to make sure you're aware and keeping top of mind that the conference this year is September 5th and 6th, again, in Raleigh. So those are the items from the coalition to put on your calendar. All right, let's jump into federal policy updates. The big news on the housing front is Johnson v. Grants pass. So the Supreme Court is scheduled to hear oral arguments in this case on April 22nd. This is the most significant case about the rights of people experiencing homelessness in decades, and will ultimately decide whether people can be ticketed and arrested for sleeping outside when they have no other safe place to go. Our partners at the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, they've created a National Week of Action Advocacy Toolkit that is linked in our call notes. And you can use this to plan events and take action during the week of April 22nd. Again, that's linked in the call notes. But some of the suggestions in are meeting with your local, state, or elected officials, hosting a roundtable, hosting a teach-in, writing an op-ed, amplifying social media from the National Homelessness Law Center, and so on. So you can also go to johnsonvgrantspass.com. Local actions are going to be announced on that website. You can find ways to participate in local rallies hosted by homelessness advocates around the state and around the country. So check that out. Again, this is a very big deal, and you can also read the more than 40 amicus briefs that were submitted by over 1,000 organizations opposed to the ongoing criminalization of homelessness. We're going to be talking more about this at the Bringing It Home conference, be talking about narrative and some of the ways we talk about interventions and solutions and combat this criminalization narrative that we're starting to see crop up around the country and in different communities here in North Carolina. So again, this is a big news. It's a very significant Supreme Court case that oral argument is going to be heard on the 22nd of this month. Moving to the state, short legislative session begins on April 24th. We're continuing to monitor the bills in our bill tracker that's up on our website. And continuing to work on appropriations issues. So stay tuned here for more information as we know it on the agenda and what's happening at the General Assembly as they come into short session. An update on insurance. So insurance companies have asked for a rate hike for the next 3 years. The NC Department of Insurance recently announced that they received a request from the Rate Bureau, which represents insurance companies, to increase mobile home fire policies statewide by an average of 83% over a 3-year period. They've also requested a 50% increase in mobile home casualty policies over the same 3-year period. Unlike homeowners insurance, mobile home fire and casualty policies actually do include flood coverage. But the proposed increase would affect over 148,000 policyholders here in the state. And this announcement comes on the heels of a request from the Rate Bureau to increase homeowners insurance policies by an average of 42% statewide. Commissioner Mike Causey has rejected the increase, and a hearing is scheduled for October 7th to figure out how to proceed. As for the proposed mobile home insurance increases, the public will have an opportunity to weigh in and provide comment, and there are 2 ways. You can find both of them in the call notes. You can email comments by April 30th to 2024mh@ncdoi.gov, or you can mail them in, and the address you can find on the call notes. Moving to local updates, there's some movement in Charlotte around changing the UDO that was implemented only last year around rules for triplexes and limiting them only to corner lots in lower intensity, lower zoned neighborhoods. A vote is coming up in July on this. If you're interested in land use policy and how a number of our larger cities have gone to allowing for more flexibility within traditionally single family only zoned areas, this conversation in Charlotte, I think, is significant. Charlotte also last week, the Housing and Neighborhood Services presented their affordable housing recommendations to council, recommending allocating almost all of the remaining $8.9 million in unallocated housing trust fund dollars. Those are local housing trust fund dollars on 5 different affordable housing developments that would add 259 affordable units for households earning between 30 and 80% of AMI. Also expected to vote on that decision later this month. Housing advocates in Greensboro, with Greensboro's Keep Gate City Housed movement, are requesting that the city allocate $440,000 in the upcoming budget towards Tenant Education Advocacy Mediation, or TEAM. It's an organization affiliated with UNCG's Center for Housing and Community Studies that provides eviction diversion assistance. In addition, the advocates are requesting $1.5 million in rental assistance funds for families facing eviction. Last year, there were almost 16,000 eviction filings in Guilford County. Households that worked with TEAM experienced a 30 to 50% reduction in evictions. Greenville City Council recently voted to support 2 LIHTC applications for the upcoming cycle, and the city agreed to fund each project at up to $500,000 if they are awarded tax credits. LIHTC applications are due to the agency on May 10th. Dare County. So housing frustrations boiled over at a contentious commissioners meeting last week, where they voted to return $35 million in funding that was allocated by the General Assembly for affordable housing, citing a stipulation in the state budget that exempted that project funding from local zoning regulations. Speaker Moore confirmed last fall that the provision was added at the request of legislators from the district to overcome issues with municipalities using zoning to effectively block the creation of affordable housing. The decision to send the funding back to the state comes after a recent report said a developer selected potential properties for development in Kitty Hawk and Manio and was moving closer towards development. This is an ongoing saga. We've seen Nags Head earlier this year rezone to prevent a LIHTC development from getting built, which is, I think, indicative of what we often see with affordable housing issues. Dare County in particular has incredible affordability challenges. This is the county I've actually lived and worked in, and yet incredible local resistance to some of the solutions that would develop new affordable housing. You can read more about that. It's linked in our call notes. Going to run down a couple events from organizations around the country that you may be interested in knowing about. National Council of State Housing Agencies is hosting a webinar on April 17th which is tomorrow. Preserving owner-occupied affordable homes, that's from 12:30 to 5:15. You can register for that, again, in the call notes. Legal Aid of North Carolina tomorrow evening is hosting an event called Fair Housing in Durham, the Act in Action. That's going to be at North Carolina Central School of Law from 5 to 7, and this will be with Leah Rothstein and Richard Rothstein, who's the author of Just Action, How to Challenge Segregation Enacted Under the Color of Law, and also Stella Adams, who is a North Carolina legend and is a civil rights and fair housing expert and advocate. This event is free, but registration is required. Again, you can find that registration link on our website. NC1, Women's Affordable Housing Network, is hosting an Empowering Women Entrepreneurs in Affordable Housing panel on the 18th from noon to 1. There's several others on here. HUD is hosting one on historic properties and flood zones on the 18th. National Alliance to End Homelessness is hosting an event on April 18th, or a webinar on coordinated entry and best practices in centering equity and ensuring effectiveness. There's an Advancing Homelessness Solutions webinar on Tuesday, May 21st. And the other big event out there, actually two more, CAHEC is hosting their Partners Conference in Raleigh, June 4th and 5th. You'll also find that registration link on our website. As always, for the folks in the LIHTC world, that's a great conference to attend. And the Women's Affordable Housing Network National Housing Summit is going to be in Atlanta, June 9th and 11th. Again, you can find that registration link on our website. We have a couple of other reports and resources in the call notes. The Paycheck to Paycheck database from the National Housing Conference is on there. There's one from Shelton Force called Alphabet Soup, breaking down all those housing and community development terms. There's several others that are worth. Also, the Many Meanings of Mixed Income and How They Affect Policymakers, which is written by former North Carolina Housing Coalition board member Mark Shelburne, and some others that are worth taking a look at when you pull up the call notes. That's all I've got for you today. Again, reminder, oral arguments in this historic Supreme Court case are coming up on the 22nd. You can find links to an advocacy toolkit and places where you can connect and post local events around the Supreme Court case. We're going to be, again, talking a lot about this, about the stories we tell, effective narratives around housing, combating the criminalization of homelessness in particular, and pushing solutions for affordability across the spectrum at the conference in June, and also obviously the conference in the fall. Get both of those on your calendars. We'll look forward to seeing you in person at both of those events this year. So have a great day. It is a pleasure having you. Thanks for continuing to show up to these calls. And again, if there are other things that you think would be useful during this time, would be helpful during this time, please reach out. We want to make sure that this is a resource for you, and that you are finding what you need in terms of policy information and connecting with events around the state. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you next time.